All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the April DocumentDB Insider Hour show. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening. And I want to thank you for taking some time out of your day to join us. And with me today is Karthik Thoda, who is a DocumentDB specialist SA. Want to introduce yourself, Karthik?
Thank you, Doug. Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm DocumentDB Specialist Solution Architect based out of London. Thanks for joining us today on this Speech Show.
All right, awesome. Thanks, Karthik. Yes, and so what we're going to talk about today is some recent DocumentDB feature releases. All right, so we do this periodically just to keep folks up to date on things that we've released, some capabilities that you may not be aware of. And with that, let me go ahead and bring up just a couple of slides to frame the conversation. And if you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. We'll try our best to keep up with them. And if we don't get it or if we miss it, do apologize. But if you do have questions, like I said, go ahead, put it in the chat, and we can go ahead and address those. But like I said, I want to start off just with a couple of slides about some new features that we have released recently. So let me get to PowerPoint here. First thing I want to talk about, I want to spend a little time on Lambda event source mapping. All right, so I'm going to dive into that, so I won't really talk about what that is right now. Then I'm going to go into a demo of that. Then I'm going to hand it off to Karthik, who's going to talk about our Amazon DocumentDB 5.0 release, which is very new as well, and really talk about one of the features in their client-side field level encryption, and he'll have some demos as well. All right, so that's what's in store for the next hour or so. So here we go with Lambda event source mapping. All right, so if you're not familiar with Lambdas, right, AWS Lambda, it's just a serverless compute, really. It's a way to deploy code and these Lambda functions, and we handle the rest for you, right? We scale out, all right, you just pay for exactly what you use. You don't have to provision any EC2 instances or even containers or anything like that. All right, so Lambdas are really incredibly popular and incredibly powerful. So what we see here on this screen is just a very high level Lambda event source mapping architecture. So over here on the left, you see a couple of sources. Right, there are multiple sources, but in this case, so for example, like Amazon MQ, Amazon MSK, and Amazon DocumentDB, which we just recently released support for that. So the way the event source mapping works is you see this box here in the middle. Is kind of where all of the magic happens. All right. So in reality, Lambda is polling these different sources, right, to retrieve events and be very responsive, right? But ultimately, what this gives you is like an event-driven architecture with Lambda. Right? So Lambda handles all of this for you. So, but it is ultimately polling the source. And based on the configuration of your function, right, it can batch based on sizes. All right, maybe you want to batch based on number of records, right? I just send me batches of 100 or maybe 1,000 records from the source, or batch based on time periods, right? For example, you could say, well, just give me every event as you get it, or every 2 minutes, send me whatever events you've got. All right, so there's a lot of flexibility around how you can configure that. And again, that's all handled by the event source mapping. And the last part, or the third part there, is the ability to invoke a function that you develop. All right, so that's what Lambda ESM provides, right? The polling, the batching, and invoking a function. What you provide is a source, right? And in this case today, we're talking about Amazon DocumentDB and a Lambda function that you write to do whatever it is you need to do to process these events, right? So that's Lambda ESM at a high level. So I just talked about ESM, but now I want to go back and, if you will, right, if you don't or when we didn't have Lambda ESM, right? If you wanted to do this type of functionality with DocumentDB, right, a common approach is what you would see here on this architecture, right? You have Amazon DocumentDB. Typically, you're storing your credentials in AWS Secrets Manager, right? We recommend that as a best practice. You've got a Lambda function that is reading from the Amazon DocumentDB change stream. And it is also writing back to DocumentDB, right? Because the Lambda function needs to know where it is within the change stream, like which events it's processed. So typical implementation is you've got to write some code in your Lambda function, not only to read from the change stream, keep track of where you are, write that back into DocumentDB. So the next time Amazon Event Bridge fires up, sends an SNS message to trigger your Lambda function knows where to pick up reading the change stream. So there was a lot of extra code in that Lambda function that you had to write and maintain in addition to the code that you are writing to handle the events or process the events. And that Lambda function can effectively call pretty much anything. The reason I have an S3 bucket is the demo I'm going to show you is we are using an S3 bucket to store the information about the events occurring in Amazon DocumentDB. All right. So prior to Lambda ESM, yes, you could do this. There was quite a few pieces, right, and a fair bit of code that you needed to write in your Lambda. Now, with ESM, similar, right? We still have Amazon DocumentDB. That's the source of our events, still persisting, or sorry, storing credentials in Secrets Manager. And that is actually a requirement with Lambda ESM. All right, so you do have to use Secrets Manager, so kind of enforcing that best practice of externalizing credentials into Secrets Manager. But there at the top now, you see that box that we saw the bigger view of earlier, right, with the polling and the batching and calling the code, in that Lambda ESM box. So what you see here is right now your Lambda doesn't have to interact directly with DocumentDB, right? Your Lambda is not reading from the change streams. It's not persisting or saving the position in the change stream back into DocumentDB. All of that's being handled by Lambda ESM, right? And again, DocumentDB is just one of many sources or triggers that Lambda ESM supports. And following along with the previous architecture diagram, all right, in this case, the function is writing to an Amazon S3 bucket. So let me go ahead and stop my sharing. And while I'm doing that, getting over to my demo here, give me just a moment. All right. Having trouble keeping track of too many windows here today. So bear with me.
Happens with all of us.
Yeah. Okay, let me share my other screen. All right. All right, so here we go. Let's see, I can increase the font size a little bit, make it a little bit easier to see. So just want to walk through the pieces, right, that we saw on that architecture diagram. All right, so remember, we have Amazon DocumentDB cluster. Right, so here is my DocumentDB cluster called source cluster. And I do have change streams enabled, right? So as I mentioned, Lambda ESM is going to be reading from change streams. So you do need to enable change streams on your cluster to be able to use Lambda ESM. I do have a secret, right? Remember, Lambda ESM does require credentials stored in the Secrets Manager secret, right? So here is my secret that my Lambda function is going to use. And then really the next part is the Lambda itself. So I'll just start with the code. As you see here, there's not much, right? And that's, again, the benefit of this, right? Previously, there would have been quite a bit of code here, right? To establish a connection to DocumentDB, right? To retrieve the current position from DocumentDB, where to read from the change stream. If there's not then you've got to initiate it, right? So we would do things like inserting canary records, retrieving the timestamp of that, persisting that, and reading from that timestamp. So a lot of code, all right? That's probably a good 3 to 4 times the amount of code that you need just to do what you want to do, which in this case, I'm just simply taking the event. All right, so in this, we have a handler that gets called, right? So default is just exports.handler. So this is what's going to be called by the ESM. And the event is a JSON object. And in this case, it's the full change stream event. All right, so it has all of the information about the event. And you're going to see what that is. All right, so in this case, all I'm doing is simply taking that change stream event, turning it into a JSON string. All right, I'm going ahead and inserting it into a bucket that I've created, setting the content type to JSON so I can view it in the browser. And then for the key, the key, I'm using the change stream event ID at this time. All right, so every change stream event is going to result in a different document being written into S3. I could do this based on the ID, all right, and maybe turn on versioning in S3. So maybe I can keep track of change history, things like that. But in this case, for the purposes of this demo, I'm just simply writing every change stream event to S3, right? Really, the purpose is more about showing how you interact, not so much what you're storing. All right, so I create the input, call put object command, send it, and that's it. All right, so pretty straightforward. So I did just want to. Oh, yeah. Do you have a question, Karthik?
No, it's very simple than the previous
Yeah.
implementation.
Right. We've both worked on that previous implementation before, and this is so much easier. Okay, so now you do, there is a little other configuration here that I do want to touch on briefly. All right. So your Lambda, all right, if you're familiar with Lambdas, there's a lot of different configuration. So here's my trigger, right? This has already been created, so you can see my DocumentDB cluster, right, is the trigger. All right, and in this case, I'm just interested in events on the catalog database and the products collection. The other thing I
So it
do want
means we have to
to,
enable the change stream in the database and configure that collection here, right?
correct. Yes, a great question to clarify. Yeah, so you do need to enable change streams. All right, you did mention earlier you have to enable it, and I've already got it enabled on my cluster.
Mhm.
All right, and if you've worked with change streams, you've got quite a bit of flexibility in terms of granularity. All right, you can enable it for every collection in every database. All right, or every collection in a specific database, or specific collection in a specific database. All right, so you can do like everything or just a single collection, or maybe 2 or 3 different collections in your cluster. All right. So in this case, I enabled it specifically for products collection in the catalog database. So for this function, that is my trigger. All right. If I had another collection, maybe a customer's collection, uh, or a customer's database might make more sense, right? Maybe I've got a customer's database, I could have a change stream enabled on that as well, and maybe a different Lambda function to take some action whenever a new customer registers, right? Maybe I want to use that as the trigger to send them a welcome email, or 10% off or 10% off offer to thank them for registering on the site. So yeah, it's a long answer to a short question. You do
Yeah,
need to
no.
have change streams enabled, and it's up to you how you want to do that. But again, you do have flexibility, right? You can have multiple handlers reading from the change streams. All right, yeah, that's a good point to clarify. All right. Now, you do need some permissions. All right, like I was starting to say, if you've worked with Lambda, or really anything within AWS and identity and access management and permissions. All right, so your Lambda does need permissions to access the required resources. So I just want to show you what that looks like for this Lambda that I've got created here. So bear with me while this comes up. So I've created a Lambda ESM policy, specifically for this function. And you see it's got a number. These are required. Like if you look at the documentation, this is documented in the Lambda developer guide, right? The different actions that you need to allow. All right, so you need to be able to describe the DocumentDB cluster, decrypt the keys, get the keys from secrets manager, things like that. The only thing I needed to add was, and again, this is really, really high level. Obviously, you want to do like least privileged access type of control here. But for my example, I just give it access to any put API on S3 and again, any resource. Ideally, you would want to scope this to the exact bucket for this function. But again, just to show that you do need to define the policy so that the Lambda can access what it needs to. So that's all taken care of. And let me close this. So really the last thing to show is my S3 bucket. So right now I don't have anything in the S3 bucket. So what I'm going to do is go into, for this demo, I'm going to go into Cloud9 environment and execute some commands on my, I still can't talk and type. Let's see here. What am I doing? Show DBs. Okay. Oh, I did shows DBs. Okay. Apologies to have to sit and watch me do this. All right, so I'm going to use my catalog database. And I've got a products database. Sorry, products collection, my catalog database. Yep. So I'm going to go to my cheat sheet here and just execute a few commands. First thing I'm going to do is insert a product into my products collection. And I'll go over here to S3 bucket, and here you see the document that got created. So let's go back, take a look at this really quick, and just to refresh your memory what we're doing. So we get the change stream event, and all I'm doing is simply writing that entire change stream event JSON object to a document in the S3 bucket, right? And the name of that document is basically the ID of the event. Right? So here we see the content. So there was an event. Here's the ID of that event, the time it occurred, and this was an insert with this ID. And here is the document that was inserted into this namespace. And here we see it was an insert. All right, so you can see I've got a lot of information in these events, so I could do a lot more in this S3 function, right? Maybe for extract the ID of the document, maybe and create that as the name of the document in S3, right? Maybe I could keep track of version histories and things like that. But again, for now, I'm just simply storing the entire change stream event. So just a couple of other examples. So with I can insert multiple documents, right? Through the Mongo API, you can insert multiple documents in a single call. All right, and here we have, all right, here we have that event.
Almost real time.
Yeah, it was almost real time, exactly. So that's why it's a really good, if you need an event-driven type of capabilities, right? This will really help. And Yeah, I mean, honestly, the others are pretty much the same, the updates and the deletes. I'll just show the update for now because I do want to just show one thing about updates. All right, so in this case, I'm updating an existing document, right, where the SKU is 159.023, and I'm adding reviews to it. Right. Currently, we don't have any reviews in this document. So we see that we matched one and we modified one. And if I come back here, here is the uh, document corresponding to that change event. And I've got this configured. So there's two ways for updates. There's two ways to handle that in change streams. One is to just retrieve the change only. Just, hey, let me know what changed in the document. The other is basically do a full document lookup. All right, where not only do you get the information about what changed, but you also get the updated document. So in my case, I'm doing that full update option. All right, so here you can see the full document after the update, and here you can see this was the update. All right, we updated this reviews field. So, and there's a delete in my demo script, but again, it's basically just going to create another entry here for the delete. And change streams, just to be aware, right? We don't DocumentDB and change streams. It doesn't um, include the document. It just indicates the ID of the document that was deleted. Right. So do be aware of that. If you're working with deletes and change streams, you just get the ID of the document that was deleted. So that's, I mean, obviously there's a lot more could go into here, but wanted to give our viewers today just a brief introduction to Lambda ESM, because it really, really simplifies event-driven applications based on DocumentDB. So with that, let me go ahead and stop my screen sharing. I'll transition it to Karthik. And for folks that may have just joined, again, welcome to the April DocumentDB Insider Hour. I've got Karthik Dota with me today, and we're just going over some recent feature releases in DocumentDB. So now we'll turn over to Karthik, who's going to talk about DocumentDB 5.0.
Thank you,
All
Doug.
right. Yeah, you're welcome.
You're able to see my screen, right?
Yes.
Perfect. Right. That was a great session on Lambda ESM, Jack. It helps us a lot. And coming to one thing before I start, so if you are deleting some data but you want to see it on chain stream, do a soft delete and then do a hard delete. So that's
Right.
one of the implementation we suggest to customers, to have the entire document in the chain stream. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. So thanks for that.
Thank you. Yeah. So I'll be talking about the DocumentDB 5.0 new features. We have launched DocumentDB 5.0 on March 1st, and that comes with a lot of new major features like client-side field encryption. What it means is we can, with the client-side field encryption, customers or the users can encrypt a particular part of data in their collection. Like you have a PII data in your collection, in your collection, and you want to encrypt only some part of that collection, only the PII data, like you want to encrypt email, or you want to encrypt phone number or credit card. If you're storing before you send it to database, rather than encrypting the entire document, you can do it with client-side field encryption. You no need to write any extra code or develop any client-side libraries. It's available with the your libraries like Python library or JSON JavaScript libraries. You can start using it. And we also add, we'll see it in a demo, the client-side field encryption, and we'll dive deep into it. How do we configure it, and how do we start using it with a sample application? And we
Got it.
have
So
added, yep,
sorry, I just had a question on that real quick, because sometimes
sure.
you know talking to customers, and there's some questions in their mind, and it's kind of like, well, I thought you're already encrypting all the data at rest and in transit, so why are you adding another encryption? So what? Yeah.
Yep,
So I guess what's maybe a little bit. It's like why how to why do you need to use this in addition to those other two?
definitely. The client, the it is on top of what we have already. The encryption at rest and encryption in transit. The client-side field encryption helps you to encrypt the data in application before you send to the database. This is for uh, achieving the compliance. For example, you are for GDPR or all that. If you want to make the data of a particular customer useless, you have a use there could be a timeline or a time bomb that you if a customer requests to delete their data, you need to delete it within 30 days or 40 days or
Yeah.
60 days. I am not very sure, but if you encrypt that data with client-side field encryption use and you delete that key, even the data is present in other systems, that is totally useless. That's one way to achieve.
Right.
And the other thing is, even the database administrator who have the access to your database will not be able to see the data without knowing what key they have used to encrypt the data. So there are other benefits to it.
Right. Yeah. And that's the key, no pun intended, right? It's encrypted in transit, encrypted at rest. But if you have permissions to read that data, when you read it, it's not encrypted, right? So this is
Yeah.
that other level of an encryption, so that now anybody may be able to read the data, but only the person who has the key to decrypt the fields can read those encrypted fields.
Yeah. Even or because if you enable audit logging on a sensitive data, that data can also be seen on the audit logs. But if you have encrypted using client-side field encryption, that data is totally encrypted. In the database, you will be only seeing the hash,
Right.
no data in whatsoever. And we have also brought in new a couple of aggregation operators, date add and date subtract. This will help you to do your date scripts very easily in DocumentDB. And we also launched index support for LM match operator. So if you are searching in arrays in a document, earlier the arrays used to do DB used to do collection scan, but now if your array is having, if you're searching on one nesting level, it will be using index on that array. And we have with DocumentDB 5.0 launch, all the drivers that are specific to 5.0 you can start using with DocumentDB. The MongoDB drivers that have designed for 5.0 you can start using for with DocumentDB. And with this launch of DocumentDB, we have increased the storage limit from 64 TB bytes to 128 TB bytes. This is applicable to all DocumentDB clusters from 3.6 to 5.0, and it is applied to all the existing clusters also. You no need to do any activity on your side. You get benefit of 128 TB extra storage with your cluster. And please note, you will be only paying for what you use. If you're not using 128 TB bytes, if you are using only 2 TB bytes, then you will be only billed for 2 TB bytes. But earlier you have the limitation that your database cannot grow beyond 164 TB bytes. Now that
Mhm.
we have double that limit.
That's nice. Yeah. And
Yeah.
so, for everybody listening, yeah, you nothing you need to do. You've now got up to double the amount of storage that you had before. So yeah, that's really actually going to help a lot of customers that I work with, because I've got some with really, really, really large data sets. So
Uh, Looking at diving into client-side field encryption. So as I said, you can encrypt the data in application before it is sent to DocumentDB. So, and it is helpful for the applications handling PII data because it is encrypted in application. Even admins cannot see the access, will not be able to read the data. And how do we configure how do we start using client side field encryption? Client side field encryption uses the KMS, customer master key stored in the KMS. So will be leveraging the AWS KMS, where you have customer master, where you will create one customer master key and generate multiple data keys using customer master key. You can have multiple customer master key. For example, you are running a multi-tenant databases and you have 3 or 4 or 5 or any number of use cases that are supporting in that multi-tenant databases, and you want to use client-side field encryption for them, you can have each and every database can have a separate customer master key, or each and every collection can also have a separate customer master key, and you can generate as many data encryption keys as possible. So it works two ways. You have customer master key. Based on customer master key, you will generate a data encryption key. With that, you will encrypt your data and decrypt your data. You can generate multiple DEKs. Like if for my data set, I can have one data encryption key. The data can be decrypted only with that key. And
Mhm.
for that record in your database, it would be another data. You can also implement another data encryption key, or you can use one data encryption key to encrypt all the records. It's up to you. It provides
Yeah,
flexibility to do many things.
got it. So it's kind of like the chain streams, right? You've got
Yeah.
flexibility on the granularity.
Exactly.
Okay, nice.
So how so in the demo we have so I will show, we'll be following these four steps. We'll be creating customer master key, and then we'll attach a IAM policy to the user who can use that customer master key to encrypt to write to the document DB and read to the document DB, and then we'll generate the data encryption key and then perform read write operation. And the prerequisites is we need to have the existing document DB cluster, and you need to have a IAM user, and that's it. We can start working with those two requirements. So let's quickly jumping onto the demo.
Mhm.
So I have a document DB cluster created, which is a document DB 5.0 cluster. I have SSL, I have created an SSL enabled cluster. It's up to you. Even though if you don't enable SSL, you can keep on working with client side field encryption, as document DB is within the VP. Even though document DB is not accessible within the outside the VPC, we suggest you to use SSL for better as a security best practice. And the other thing is I am using secrets manager to store the credentials. It's not mandatory, but again is a best practice. So I'm using a secrets manager for this to store the credentials for this data database. So I'm my credentials are stored here, and I'm using a existing IAM user with the name of demo CSFLE. So we have the three prerequisites, and the first step is to create a customer master key. So this is all mentioned in the blog. I can share you. We can just look at the document DB client side field encryption. You will have the blog written on that, and it provides a step-by-step process to configure and use client-side field encryption. And moving to my demo, the first step here is to create a customer master key. I'll be creating one customer master key. Next, I'll give some name to it inside our. Next, I need to provide who can be using this customer master key. I'll use demo CSFLE,
Okay.
and I use the same one as an admin. Just for this demonstration, I'm using the same user for as an admin as an key user. In reality, you will be using different users or different roles for the admin and for the key user. So you will have
Right.
admin who can delete the key and who can update some attributes of that key, but you might be having multiple users who can use the key.
Yep. Makes sense.
Yep. And that's it. I have my customer master key now. Now I will be updating the IAM policy to to provide the demo CSFLE user to use this key. I'll just need the key ARN. I'm going to my policy. This user has only two policies attached. One is to access the secret, to retrieve the secrets from the secret manager, to read and write from the document database, and you have a another policy I attached for uh, retrieving the KMS key. You can see the secrets manager policy. It's just
Hmm.
a limited set of permissions the user has. And I'll just edit this policy to provide access to the recently created KMS key. I'm just providing extra resources.
All right.
I'm done with my policy now. I create Now let's get into how shall we start using it. So I'll go to my Cloud9 and I created a very straightforward program which with three functions. So these are the same functions that are present in the block. We have the block here. All the steps I did a KMS key, created a KMS
Hmm.
key. The second step I did was to associate this IAM policy, update the IAM policy and associate with that particular IAM user. And the third one is I'll start generating the data encryption key. So the data encryption key using the customer master key is what I'm going to do now. So from here, our code comes into picture. So this is
Got it.
what.
So
So yep,
sorry. So would it be safe to say, like back to your example, like
yep,
say like some sort of multi-tenant or even different users, right? You might have a data encryption key per user.
yes.
Would that?
You can have
Yeah.
the data encryption key per user or per record. It's up to you. Per record is
Yeah.
it's up to you if you have what is your security and compliance requirement based on
Hmm.
that. If you are having multiple data encryption creating one encryption key for each user, please note for each and every insert you are creating another key, so you are doubling your inserts.
Hmm. Got it. Yep.
I'm having a get secret. This function has nothing to do with client-side field encryption, but it is to get my credentials of IAM user and read the secrets from the secrets
From
manager.
secrets manager. Yep.
Yeah, it's just getting the C. I configured my IAM user with AWS configure. That's it. And here, this is a sample. Let me update my KMS key. This is a new key I just created. This ARN 335 ending with.
Hmm.
I'm using this 335. And now, where am I storing my data encryption key? Data encryption keys are also stored in the database. So you can store it in a different database, which is not accessible to others. So that is the key namespace, which is I'm storing it in the ENCR namespace or ENCR database, and I'm storing it in a collection called as DEK keys. And my encryption key name would be encrypt email, demo encr email. So you are generating a key. When you are generating a key, it would be having the key name. Each and every key you can name it as a key name. It could be your customer name in
Hmm.
the real world, to easily identify, or customer ID if you want to be uh, more secure, or any other user defined. And here comes the generation of keys. I'm just retrieving the user ID, password, host, and access and secret key from the get secret function. And I'm using the creating a client, a Mongo client to connect to DocumentDB. And I'm generating a key here with here data encryption key, create data key. And this would be stored in DocumentDB in the ENCR. I'll show it in the action. And then I'll I'll start using the DEK key to read and write the data into the database gamesDB and collection users. And this is what we are doing is I'm encrypting a email and encrypting the date of birth of my user. So this is my date of birth. These are my detailed gamer tag. What is the gamer tag and what is the encrypted email? The encrypted email is janedoe@example.com, and the date of birth was 1990 I will be encrypting these two fields and leave the remaining fields unencrypted. And this script will show you the encrypted and unencrypted document, and we'll also see how the data would be in the database.
Got it. Okay, and I noticed there's two different algorithms there.
Yep.
So are those the two that we currently support, or are there other algorithms?
These are the two algorithms we support. That's a great point,
Mhm.
Doug. So the deterministic algorithm will be generating the same hash for the same value all the time if you
Okay,
are using deterministic algorithm. But if you are using random algorithm for the same value, the hashes will be generated different, because date of birth the reason why I'm using this random is the date of birth can be same for different users. The hashes should be different to be more secure. Even though date of birth can be same, the hash should be different. If two hashes look same, uh, there is a chance that they might be thinking the two users are having the same date of birth. To
mhm,
avoid that, I'm using a random algorithm here. And for the emails, which is almost unique, we are just using deterministic. uh,
got
I
it.
mean, if you use a random, there are some challenges when you are trying to retrieve the data. So that's the reason why it's always better if you are reading the data very frequently, and you are using that, use deterministic. Random always generate different hashes, so that's a use it your caution, use with caution. That's what.
Got it. Okay, yeah, but the point is, it's if you need it, it's there.
Yep, exactly.
Yep.
And okay. So because I have two functions, I just made okay, before I generate anything, let me log into document database and show you if there are any data. It's there is any data. It's empty database. Now I first is because before I do a insert update, I need to generate the key. So now I generate this key. Now the data encryption key name is demo encr email. This is what I mentioned here, demo encr email. That would be my data key. What is my key name? And let's see it in the database. Now I have my encr database created, so I
Mhm,
use
mhm.
this and show collections. I have the dek keys. This is what I mentioned. encr.dek keys is my key vault namespace. So where am I storing my data encryption keys?
Got it. And now, if you need to, let's say, both of you and I are using
Mhm.
this cluster, and I have a DEK and you have a DEK. Right? I mean, you don't want me accessing yours, I don't want you accessing mine. Well, we could use different namespaces, right? And then we can use RBAC to
Exactly.
control, right? That, yeah, you can't do anything on my collection. I can't do anything on your collection. But yeah, for the
Exactly.
purposes of this, it's just using yeah, it's using a single collection, but you're not limited to a single collection.
Yeah. See, the DEK is generated, and please note it is using the KMS key what we have created. So this DEK is generated using using the CMK that just we have created, which is ending with C335, and that is okay. I did not change did not save this.
Ah,
Let me just clear the database.
Yeah,
No
that gets
data
me all the
mesh.
time. Make the change, but don't save it.
Yep. That is C335, ending with
Hmm.
C335. This is the KMS key.
Hmm.
So we have created the DEK using this KMS key we just created. And now this is the key material based on which our data is encrypted. Now I'll be doing a insert of this customer record with username with the user details uh, Joe do example.
Hmm.
Let me do that. I run this program. I perform read write. This is the data that is created. So this is how the encrypted document looks, and this is how the decrypted document looks. And
Got
now
it.
let's see how this data is seen in the database. Now I'll be having one more DB. This is games DB. This is where my actual data is stored. And let me show you the users collection. db.users.find.pretty. It's just the hash.
Mm, okay. All right. Yeah. So anybody who doesn't have the data encryption key, they're just going to see that
Yep.
binary data.
Yep.
Nice.
Some customers start using. So if I have to, if your organization is worried that the data is present in many places, you might not be knowing if the data is fully deleted, and you might have a risk of compliance, not meeting the compliance. Just come to this ENCR encryption key data store and delete that encryption key with which you have encrypted your customer data. And once it is gone, you cannot, there is no way to restore, even though uh, you someone has the access to this data. So just
Right.
come to use encr and delete delete this key. Then
Hmm.
you are then the data, even though it is present, is useless.
Nice. Nice.
So
So, oh, go ahead.
no, that's about the client side field encryption.
Okay. Yeah, just had a quick question because you had mentioned earlier about the deterministic versus
Hmm.
the random, right? The random makes it more difficult to look up, right? To look up the data. Can I do lookups on how would I do it? Lookups
Yep.
on encrypted fields? Can I do
Yeah.
that?
Definitely, you can do a point in queries. So range queries won't be supported on the encrypted data.
Hmm.
Point queries, if you are looking at equality queries, I mean to say, if you are doing a equality queries on encrypted data, that is supported. The indexing on the encrypted data for equality is still supported. But
Okay.
queries might be, it will not throw an error, but it will be giving you some data that could be meaningless.
Right. Yeah, because you don't know what each value encrypts to,
Exactly.
and the ranges are going to change. So, okay. Yeah, so that's definitely good to know. So
Yeah.
point lookups, like an equality, you can do that on the encrypted fields, but ranges probably not going to work. And
Right.
and again, if you're using random, again,
The point queries
random,
will also not work.
yeah, point queries are not going to work because
It
it's a
might be
different
returning
hash
you
every time.
one record
Yeah,
which is matching at that random thing, because what
yeah,
it does under the covers is, you whatever the query you provided, like 1990 it will generate a hash, and you will try to match that hash. If it is not matching, it will not return, even though you have multiple records of 1990.
right. Yeah,
If you
so
use
it
random, if you use
yeah,
deterministic, then it will return all your records of 1990.
nice. All right. Yeah, thanks. Well, that was a good
Yeah,
demo.
yeah.
That actually
And
helped me a lot too, because it helped
thank you.
clear it up in my mind.
Yeah. As we have some time, I'll also just want to show a demo of the new aggregation operators if we don't have any questions.
There were a couple of things in chat, but I've been addressing them in chat. So yeah,
Sure.
no other questions right now.
Okay. So we have now added date add and date subtract very quickly. I'm switching to a new database and I'll try to insert some data, some records into database. And I record. So this is order dates. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to calculate what could be my probable expected delivery date for for particular set of orders. So
Mhm.
I know my normal order date would be 4 days or 3 days after I place the order. So the expected delivery date, what the customer sees, need to be populated. So earlier, before the support of date add and date subtract, they used to do it on the application side, or
Mhm.
used to do a complex thing. But with the addition of date add and date subtract, you have more flexibility. You can add dates with hours, days, or years. So here I'm just adding uh, 1 day or 1 day to order date so that I'm giving an expected date. Oh, sorry, I'm adding 5 days for an expected delivery date. So my order date is 3/31, and what is my expected delivery date is 5 April.
Got it.
So this is a pay date.
Okay.
And you can change it to the unit to day to month, day to hours, day to years. The unit is day, hour, and month are supported. So you can change that not all, or you can also add weeks instead of
Okay.
just always using days or hours. And the similar way, you can do a date subtract. I'm just doing a similar one, might not be the right example for the use case, but way to use date subtract is I'm just making that you placed an order, and what is the order estimate paid date versus order estimated date. So my pay date was if my application is thinking that my pay date is today, my order should
Mhm.
be placed yesterday. So I'm
Uh,
just doing a that kind of use case
got
here.
it.
My actual order date is 31st. My pay date is first, and what is my actual estimated order date was again 31st. All the data
Okay.
is right, so you will be seeing the same values. But what I'm doing is I'm subtracting a day from my pay date in this aggregate function.
Got it. Okay. I thought you were gonna have some sort of time travel delivery here. So, okay.
No, no. Yeah,
Nice. So yeah, but yeah, this is great, right? Again, taking some of the burden off of developers, right? Not having to write logic in your code to do these types of things. You
right.
can do it in the database with a simple aggregation. So just pushing more of the work down to the database. Very nice.
Yeah. And one thing before we end, so with client-side field encryption, you can encrypt selective fields, but please make sure what you are encrypting. Think twice, because your range queries might not be able to work on at the encrypted
Mm,
field. So encrypt what is actually needed. So that's one
got
thing
it.
I just wanted to mention. Yeah,
Yeah, no, good point. Yep, good point. Because, like we said, the range queries are most likely not going to give you the expected results.
yeah,
So yeah, just be aware um, of the impact to your lookups with these. So understand, yes, you do need to encrypt some things, but you may not be able to do range queries on them. Still do point lookups. All right. Well, thank you, Karthik. This has been, informative for me. Hopefully informative for our listeners as well. I really appreciate you joining us here today, and I want to thank everybody, all of our viewers, for taking time out of their day to join us for DocumentDB Insider Hour this month. So that's a wrap, and with that, we will see you all again in May. So take care and see you all again soon.
See you all again soon. Thanks for joining
All
us.
right.
Thanks, Doug.
Yep.
Bye.
All right. Thank you, Karthik.